I wanted to ask a question about sort of well, I don't know whether we've quite covered it, but things like the community, the culture, and the clash of commercial interests. And I remember you telling a story on that film, which I was wondering if you might repeat for me, about going to see The Rabbi when you were setting up the Fillmore originally, and having a lot of trouble with the local neighbourhood. If that's the origin of that question, then I was just wondering how, at the end of the time of the Fillmore, what relationships were like with the community and with the state of the culture.
Well, it went on, of course, that whole era till the early 70s, and I've always thought that if I ever got around to writing the book, and I've written thousands of little pieces of paper that I've got stashed away in my closet, I've always thought a marvelous, very apropos title would be The Fillmore Years or America Wins. That sooner or later, this big octopus eats up pretty much everything. America now is the music industry is it's like Sara Lee or Kodak or IBM. It's like everything else. It ran out its course, but they were very much against it, the neighborhood, because here were these long-haired, sandaled, Levite Caucasian species that came into the Fillmore area, and the merchants very much into civil rights. And on the third attempt, we did win it. And then little by little, as the merchants realized that these young Levite, sandaled, long-haired Caucasian species had money and spent money, they became enamored with these Levite, long-haired, sandaled Caucasian species. I was always very angry about that we all need money to live, and I live much better than I used to. But I remember a particular fire commissioner did everything in the early days to close me down. He'd step on the fire escape and he'd say, and I was not about to give him a payoff. You know, I could never do that. And I said, "Do you want a new fire escape? Fine." And I borrowed another $18,000 and put them in. I said, "All right, Chief, you got your fire escape. What else do you want?" And it just drove them crazy. But the same fire chief, about 3 years later, when the Fillmores became very popular, and Time and Newsweek and all the papers came in and said, what a wonderful thing this is for the youth. Well, about 3 years after the beginning, I'm standing in the lobby of the Fillmore one night, and this fire chief came in with a visiting fire chief from Seattle. And he came up the steps, and I saw him, and I started turning around, and he said, "Oh, Bill." And he calls me over, and he introduces me, he says, "I'd like you to meet Chief Thurnbull, the fire chief of Seattle." Now, this was his line. He says, "I was just telling the chief how we've been working together over the years to fight juvenile delinquency." The same bastard tried to close me over and over, was looking for a shake-off, a shakedown over the years. It became a business, and I always try to keep it a respectful business, but you know, they started having hamburgers in the Haight-Ashbury like everywhere else, and eventually the sign changed to a Love Burger. Now you're going to tell me the guy who makes those hamburgers has any more compassion than I do? He just has a different sign. He put a flower in his hair and he counted his money at night like I did. Or the guy who had a very creative and very good handcraft of leatherwares or sandals in the Haight-Ashbury. Well, once it got more popular, you can go in there and get them in the psychedelic green at 14 double E and 9 double B. And all of a sudden, he went from well-crafted to assembly line, and he had a shop in the back, and the only thing that was missing was a whip. Ha! Let's get those sandals made, or let's get those Love Burgers going, or get going with those beads, you know, 2 green, 1 purple. I've never minded anybody doing their gig. Just say who you are. The same as a musician who says, "I'm just doing my thing. I'm not a professional, and if I want to tune up on the stage for a half hour, I can." No, you can't. I'm paying you $1.98 or $5 billion. And the minute you take a penny as a musician, you are a professional musician. And if you're an artist and you respect yourself and you respect the public and it says 8 o'clock, you be prepared and you be tuned and you get on that stage and let's go. And of course I was from the other side. How can you talk to us that way? I said, well, that guy's worked all week, he's been dealing all week, he's been sweeping the street all week, and he got together $3, $4, $5 to see you play. He doesn't want to see you tuning. You think you do because you think you're God. You ain't God. And you may try to convince him you're God, but you're not. Well, as time passed, they were winning for a while, not being responsible, not playing to the best of their ability, or not taking the responsibility of what you could do, misusing the power. And I'm not against rock and roll. Some of my great times has been watching some of the shows and watching the reaction of the public. But in the early days, there was too much of misuse of power, wherein an artist had to realize that a great percentage of the public out there were just about do anything he asked them to do. I think for a good indication is Jimi Hendrix put a band around his head and around his knee, and all of a sudden tie-dye was in vogue. When Mr. Morrison decided to show how beautiful his body was in Florida, the underwear business took a drop the same way the undershirt business took a drop when Clark Gable took his shirt off in the 30s, and it happened one night with Claudette Colbert, and he didn't wear an undershirt, and the men stopped wearing undershirts. When Janis Joplin walked on a stage, or Hendrix, or some of the other greats, the public pretty much told them that they were the gods. Well, look how much could have been done. Look what Mr. Leary told the young people to do. Disregard your parents, do your own thing, tune in and drop out. Very dangerous. It could have been even more dangerous than it was. Thank God that there wasn't that much damage done, but a lot of damage was done. There are people that I know today, very personally, who still haven't come back from their trip. And some of them are quite popular musicians. So there are the negative sides, and of course there are the great positive side. On a personal level, it was an ability to run an organization the way I did and still do. The other one is that there exists in the United States and in the world, as a result of the 60s, a very, very healthy, very positive viewpoint by the young people. In particular, the graduates of the 60s, and you guys, hopefully to some extent myself, that you can come into my hotel room and not try to impress me. You want to talk to me, I'll talk to you. You want it all sweet, I can't give it to you all sweet. Well, we're not in the minority anymore. You walk in the streets of Melbourne or Sydney or Quebec, and there is an element of our society that says, let's not bullshit with each other. If we're going to do anything, let's talk to each other and spend a night together. Why tell you have a nice skirt and I have nice pants, and hey baby, you want to have a drink or you want to get wasted? Would you like to spend some time with me? That came out of the 60s. And I have, of all the things that came out of the 60s, besides the culture and the music and the art, the one thing that hopefully will last is that people stopped wasting a lot of time in the way they communicated. That they cut through a lot of this stuff and just said, hello. A lot of it was fantasy, running into a room and dancing with everybody and thinking you're communicating. All you're really doing is enjoying yourself, letting off some steam. But out of that came dialogue and exchange and relationships, and a more direct means of communication, which the results of which we're seeing now. It had a great deal to do with women's lib. It had a great deal to do with stopping the war. Mr. Nixon didn't stop the war. The young people put pressure on big business in America, and I think it had a great deal to do with stopping the war. I know many of us were arrested in various campaigns, but